Hi, and thanks for joining me today for a look at Sophos Intercept X Advanced and Intercept X Advanced with EDR. My name is Michael Graves, and I'm a sales engineer at Sophos and I cover New York City and Long Island. Please be sure to write down any questions you might have and send them over to your account team. I've included each of our email addresses in the comments below this video. As we all know, the threats we face today are different from years ago. The bad guys are innovating more than ever, which means attacks are getting more sophisticated. Sophos Labs sees on average 400,000 unique, previously unseen pieces of malware per day, 75% of which are only seen by a single organization. Ransomware makes up a decent chunk of these samples, and because of the potential payout, attackers are very motivated. More than half of the attacks on our endpoints aren't even from executable malware. So how do we sufficiently address these concerns and others and keep our organizations safe? Intercept X was built to defend against not just known threats, but never seen before threats as well. With the power of our deep learning technology and advanced capabilities, we can actually foretell the good from the bad. And in a way, it's like it lets us see the future. Intercept X is the most comprehensive endpoint protection with a unique combination of advanced techniques that allows us to stop the widest range of threats. This includes protecting against unknown threats, stopping ransomware, and denying the attacker. Protecting against the unknown means stopping never seen before attacks using predictive signatureless technology. We stop ransomware with technology specifically designed to block file-based and master boot record malicious encryption. Deny the attacker means frustrating adversaries by denying them the tools and techniques they rely on to carry out their attack. Intercept X Advanced was the top-rated solution for both enterprise endpoint protection and small business endpoint protection in the SE Labs Endpoint Protection Test Report from June 2018. This is the first time that Intercept X Advanced has been tested publicly, proving what we've known for a long time. Sophos has the best endpoint protection on the planet. Intercept X Advanced achieved a 99% protection accuracy rating, a 100% legitimate accuracy rating, and a 100% total accuracy rating. Each of these scores were the highest in the test. They also tested false positive impacts, and according to the SE Labs test, Sophos Intercept X Advanced blocked all of the public and targeted attacks. It also handled the legitimate applications correctly. As a result, SE Labs awarded Sophos Intercept X Advanced its AAA award for both enterprise and small business protection. It's also worth noting that several competitors who tout their machine learning capabilities were not able to preemptively stop attacks. Instead, they were found to merely neutralize a handful of attacks at runtime. If you'd like a copy of this or any other third-party test reviewing Sophos Intercept X Advanced, they're available on sophos.com and through your Sophos account team. So one of the things that you'll hear us talk about at Sophos is defense in depth. And we provide multiple layers of protection at each stage of the attack chain. Each of Sophos's layers of protection is best in class, but it's the combination of features that really sets us apart. That's what we refer to as the power of the plus. To stop foundational threats, historically, we've used a combination of signatures and heuristics. This is what traditional endpoint security, including Sophos Endpoint, is based on, and it works very well for known threats. Intercept X has a feature called CryptoGuard. When we see any malicious encryption happening, we stop it in its tracks, and then we roll back any changes made by the ransomware. We employ deep learning, an advanced form of machine learning, to detect unknown malware. Using the industry's #1 malware detection engine, we're able to detect never seen before malware before it ever runs on the endpoint. We also employ anti-exploit technology to frustrate attackers by preventing their favorite tools and techniques. Rather than examining millions of malware samples, we instead focus on approximately 25 exploits attackers rely on to spread malware. It's the power of the plus that really sets Sophos apart. We have the most comprehensive endpoint protection thanks to our unique combination of techniques built to stop the widest range of endpoint threats today and tomorrow. Let's look at a typical example of an attack and how Intercept X Advanced uses the power of the plus. The first stage begins with the attacker delivering their weapons and sending instructions telling them what to do. This stage gives attackers a foothold in the environment. Next, attackers look to exploit endpoints in order to carry out their attack. This gives them the ability to execute malicious code. This leads us to the boom. Now we're at the post-execution phase. This area to the right of the boom is where attackers have inflicted damage. Let's dig into this attack chain in more detail, starting with the delivery and instruction stage. How do attacks start? Some common ways include sending a phishing email that gets users to click a malicious URL, or perhaps includes a weaponized Office document attachment. Perhaps the user goes directly to a malicious URL to download a legitimate looking program. However, attackers can take advantage of exploits to deliver attacks using techniques like code caves, which hide malicious code inside legitimate programs. Once delivery occurs and attackers have a foothold into the environment, they then need to send instructions for what to do next. Often that occurs by communicating with a command and control server. Now let's look at stage 2, exploit and execution. Attackers have a foothold in the environment, but what are they going to do with it? First, they're going to take advantage of exploits in order to get further along in the attack chain. Attackers might leverage exploits in order to harvest usernames and passwords. This gives them the ability to gain access to sensitive data. An attacker might use exploits to escalate privileges, for example, migrating from one process to another with greater access. They can also take an existing application, such as a web browser, and use it to execute malicious code or drop malware. This leads us to one of the most common payloads, a malicious executable file, or malware. Lastly, let's look at stage 3, the boom. At this point, attackers have delivered and executed malicious code and can now do their damage. We sometimes call this the boom. The boom could be stealing sensitive information such as credit card numbers or exfiltrating other personally identifiable information or company secrets. We've also seen a rise in ransomware as the payload. In fact, this was the most common delivery method. Attacks are not just limited to laptops and desktops. Servers can also be impacted by the boom. In many ways, servers are your most important endpoints, as they contain the motherlode of sensitive data and could seriously impact an organization if they were to be hit by ransomware. Sophos has several types of products to stop phishing, including network security, email protection, and most notably, phish threat to prevent users from opening phishing emails. For this exercise, let's just assume that the attacker is successful in getting a user to click. If a user were to click on a malicious link in a phishing email, the web safety feature in Sophos Central Endpoint Advanced would detect this and stop the delivery. If the phishing email included a weaponized Office document, Intercept X would use its anti-exploit technology, specifically application lockdown, to disrupt the attack. If a user went directly to a URL on their own to download a piece of software, it's possible it could be a code cave application where malicious code was hidden inside legitimate code. In this case, Sophos anti-exploit technology would detect this technique and disrupt the attack. Sophos Endpoint Advanced and Intercept X also has technology built in that detects malicious traffic coming from known command and control servers, which would prevent the instructions from being received. If an attacker was able to get through the delivery and instructions phase, Sophos has more defenses waiting at the second stage. One of the more common techniques attackers use is credential harvesting. Anti-exploit technology sees credential harvesting tools like Mimikatz being used, and it would be prevented by Sophos. When attackers attempt to use tools such as process migration to escalate privileges, anti-exploit technology would block this from happening. If an attacker tries to use an application such as a web browser to exploit a system, anti-exploit application control would see this application running code it shouldn't be, and Sophos would detect and prevent this action. If a known executable was used, then foundational methods such as a signature would detect the malware before it ran. Additionally, Sophos has the industry's most sophisticated deep learning malware detection model, which would be able to detect even unknown executables without relying on signatures pre-execution. By now, Sophos is likely to have stopped the attack at multiple points along the attack chain. Even if the attacker was able to get to the boom stage, there's still more layers of defense. If an attacker tried to exfiltrate sensitive information, such as credit card information, Sophos' data loss prevention functionality would stop this from happening. If ransomware actually ran, CryptoGuard and WipeGuard technology would see malicious encryption happening. It would stop this behavior and roll back any affected files. It's also worth noting that Intercept X for server has feature parity, meaning it also includes deep learning, anti-exploit, and CryptoGuard ransomware protection. So if an attack such as ransomware was launched on a server, Intercept X for server would be there to thwart it. If an attack did occur, Sophos Clean would kick into action and clean up any malware and remnants of the malware on the endpoint. While this was happening, customers also who have an XG firewall would benefit from automated incident response via synchronized security. The endpoint security heartbeat would be shared, and the endpoint would be automatically isolated while it was being remediated. Also included is root cause analysis or threat cases, which gives a visual representation of the entire attack chain from start to finish. So you can see the entire attack chain in a simple to understand graph. Now let's jump into Sophos Central and take a look at Intercept X. Okay, let's take a look at a typical ransomware example. First, I'll show you my client health. You can see this green check mark indicating my computer is healthy, no active infections. You can see it's recently updated, and I have Endpoint Advanced and Intercept X both installed on it. Next, since I have auto isolation enabled, I'm going to show you that we have connectivity to the internet. So let's go to sophos.com. And let's also just open a RDP session to our domain controller. All right. So it won't actually connect, but you can see it's able to get there. Cool. So what we'll do now is open our email, and in there we've got a document where it's going to simulate some HydroCrypt ransomware. So I'm going to open this document here. And you can see the macros are disabled as they should be, but users are still able to override this behavior, and typically they will. So you'll see as soon as I click on enable content at the bottom right hand side of the screen, the Sophos client is already telling us, hey, we've got some ransomware picked up, and here's where we picked it up. If we actually look at our client health now, you'll notice that not only is its health state red, and we have a mark over here under malicious behavior, but it also confirms that the computer is now isolated. So if we take a look here, we can see that the endpoint picked up ransomware and where it picked it up. But if we actually try to now access the web as we did before, let's go to a different website here. We can see that that's now been blocked, and the reason for it is because the endpoint's isolated. If we now try to establish that remote desktop connection to our domain controller, you'll notice it's going to time out. We're unable to connect. So this is important for a couple of reasons here. So number one, we're isolating from all other devices on our network. This is going to prevent cross-infection to other healthy machines. Number two, we're isolating from the outside world, the internet. Cut off any attacker that might be trying to steal data or cause an additional infection. So right now in the background, what's happening is Sophos Clean is actually running, cleaning up the ransomware in this case and any affected files. Now, if we look at our file system here, you can see I've got a number of documents inside of this folder here, and 3 of them were infected with HydraCrypt ransomware before CryptoGuard, using behavior detection, said, hey, this is ransomware, and prevented it from going any further. It also, if you notice, restored back the original files because we backed those files up prior to releasing them to any process on our machine requesting them. Now, these malicious files or these encrypted files would be all that you have if CryptoGuard was not on the machine. All of your files would be inaccessible until you paid that ransom or restored from backup. These files are only here for demonstration purposes because they get cleaned up instantaneously. So the user would never actually see these anyway. But in order to be able to display this to you for demonstration purposes, we left them behind intentionally. What's most important is the original files are now back where they came from. And that happens again so quickly that the user won't know that they were missing in the first place. So we can see here that Sophos automatically cleaned up the infection. Our health state is now green. Computer is protected. We're no longer isolated. If we take a look here in our email, we can see a notification about this ransomware being discovered. You can see now the computer has been removed from isolation. So now if we were to try to establish that RDP session to our DC, again, we'd be able to reach it. And lastly here, if we open a browser, we will now be able to get back out to any site. And there we go. So this has happened all automatically. No user interaction, no IT interaction. Let's now take a look at the threat case. So here we are in Sophos Central. Let's first take a look at the alert that was generated for this event. You can see it right up top here under most recent alerts. We can click directly from that view or go over to our alerts pane here. Notice right up top we have our CryptoGuard detection. We can drop this down and get a whole lot more information about the alert itself. We can action the alert in line, and we can decide the frequency of these alerts that we want to receive. Notice the amount of detail that's listed here. The sequence of events, the thumbprint of the infection, the files that were infected and cleaned, and a bunch of other details. So let's mark this as resolved and clean that up. Next, let's look at our Threat Analysis Center. Here we'll see things like threat cases. Notice here we have the threat case generated from our last infection on the endpoint. If we click on the name of it here, you'll see at the very top a little summary of what happened. So you can see on this Windows 10 Pro machine here, we picked up this bad process of Sophos Tester, and here's when we picked it up and confirmation that we've cleaned it. Most important here, though, is actually the entry point or root cause. This was Outlook in this case, as we know it came in through an email, as ransomware attacks frequently do. The name CryptoGuard indicates that it was a ransomware detection. We can see here the number of business files that were potentially impacted in this attack. We can see the user who is logged on. And we can see the automatic prioritization of this case, which we can override if we want to. We also see that this is a brand new case, but if I'm the engineer that's going to be looking into it, we can change the status here to in progress to let our colleagues know that someone's already looking at this, and then close it off once you're done. There's also a case record here that'll give you a little bit of an audit trail. For example, here, I started working on the case just now. I can also notate anything that I want about the case as I discover it for myself to refer back to or anyone else to view. The most important part of this is the Analyze section here, which is going to show you graphically or visually the attack from start to finish. Notice that we can display the full graph of all the surrounding information and things that occurred, or just the direct path from what we picked up as the root cause or entry point, all the way through to the bad thing that happened here. And you can see here that we opened Outlook. We launched Word from Outlook, and that accessed this document here, which was embedded in our email. And that macro again that ran launched this tool, which then copied itself and started doing stuff to our files. We can see a little bit more information in the full graph here. So again, we want to take a little bit more of a look at the Sophos tester tool to see more information about what happened here. So all I need to do is click on it, and we get a lot more information showing up on the right-hand side. That information includes things like where the file ran from, what process ID it used, who's the user that launched it, what its hash is, so I can do a little bit of research on VirusTotal, for example, how long it ran on the endpoint, and what it affected, if anything. And you can see here there's a number of file interactions. If we want to know a little bit more about those, we can come over here and click on the files. So you can see my at-risk files here, and down below you can see the files that were actually maliciously encrypted with HydroCrypt ransomware during our example. Not only do we have this visual representation, but below the graph you can see this listing of every item that's represented directly or indirectly, and this is fully searchable as well. I can also click on items down here as well as the graph up top. So we think seeing this attack from a visual standpoint really makes it simple to understand what happened, and most importantly, showing you the root cause, what allowed this to happen in the first place, is important so that you know what steps you need to take to prevent things like this from happening again. Also, showing you this visually eliminates the need to sit there looking at log files from potentially multiple sources for hours or days. Now that we've looked at Intercept X Advanced, let's talk about how EDR can help you be more proactive when dealing with potential threats. Traditionally, EDR was defined by the gap. What do we mean by this? Endpoint protection focuses on determining if something is benign or malicious, but there's an area of uncertainty or a gray zone, which we call the gap. EDR is defined by the gap and their ability to make sense of it. However, other EDR tools are weak at protection. This means that the gap is fairly large and filled with incidents that should have been stopped in the first place. Intercept X has the industry's best protection, which not only means it stops more threats, but it has a much smaller gap. This leads to a lighter workload and less noise getting in the way, so you can focus on the most important incidents. Traditional EDR products have a number of challenges common between them. Filling a big bucket full of data and sifting through it takes a lot of time and money to get the best out of it. If you look at how a competitive solution is demoed, they'll often use human intuition and prior experience or knowledge to make connections between the events to understand what a true indicator of compromise is. It takes a lot of time and money to acquire these skills and to become a security expert and get the value out of the solution. This will also be another solution that you have to maintain, manage, and monitor, which stands separate from your primary endpoint, server, and network solutions. Another interface, another set of paradigms, another way of doing things, adding to the overhead of the solution. A number of EDR solutions which focus on detecting threats after they have executed, effectively reactive security, are now quickly trying to add in basic or shallow proactive protection features into their products. These vendors are unproven and their solutions are nowhere near as mature as those from leading vendors such as ourselves. Even with a traditional EDR solution, you'll need to go out and acquire effective best-of-breed preventative products like our Intercept X. The expense of a dedicated solution makes them unviable for smaller businesses and a big cost to large businesses, which offers a debatable return on investment. We spoke with 3,100 IT decision makers in a recent survey. The reality is that EDR can help address many of the challenges revealed by the survey, starting with understanding cyber attacks. 2 out of 3 organizations suffered a cyber attack last year. However, 17% of IT managers didn't know how long the threat was in their environment, and 20% don't know how it got in. EDR can provide the answers to these questions, enabling organizations to identify the root cause of the attack, how long it's been in their system, and the potential impact. Armed with this information, organizations can put in place the defenses they need and plug their security holes. We also saw that organizations take on average 13 hours to discover a threat. EDR can also proactively identify suspicious events, enabling IT teams to detect attacks that may have gone unnoticed for much longer. As a result, EDR enables organizations to take effective steps to reduce their likelihood to become yet another cyber attack victim. Another insight from the survey is that organizations spend 48 days a year investigating potential security incidents. EDR can slash this time by offering expert analysis and guided incident response into potential incidents that teams of all sophistication levels can understand and act upon. This dramatically reduces the time spent detecting and responding to incidents. Yet we've also seen that 54% of those organizations with EDR can't take full benefit from their solution. This is why it's so crucial to choose an EDR solution that works for your organization rather than one that will just add more work. A properly implemented EDR solution can help organizations use their limited resources more efficiently. The bottom line is the benefits of EDR can be significant. However, to take full advantage, it's essential to choose an EDR solution that your organization and your available resources will be able to properly utilize. Let's take a look at some of the benefits provided by Intercept X Advanced with EDR. Intercept X with EDR starts with the strongest protection. We'll help you easily identify and understand potential risks so you don't have to add or train staff. And we'll guide you through responding to incidents quickly and easily. The value of having the best protection in the industry means that we can lessen the burden on an EDR solution. This means that we're able to stop attacks and reduce the overall attack surface. The very best EDR solution on the market should have very little to do if you have the strongest protection. What's more, this significantly reduces the noise in the system and lightens the overall workload for an already taxed IT security team. But don't take our word for it. Here are some of the acknowledgments that we've received from third-party assessments. Recently, we added a new Threat Analysis Center dashboard. From there, you can access threat cases for both endpoint and server. It's also home to on-the-fly and saved threat searches, where you can perform cross-estate hunting. We'll help you understand your security posture with guided investigations, showing you the latest information from Sophos Labs, using deep learning to help you easily understand the potential threats in your environment before they become threats, and then giving you a simple way to remove threats from your entire environment and ensure they can't come back. Let's take a quick look at what a typical day in the life of a threat analyst might look like using Sophos Intercept X Advanced with EDR. The admin notices the highest machine learning ranked incident is something called dropper.exe. Then he looks at a threat case showing dropper.exe distributing a piece of malware which was blocked. Next, he performs a threat search to see if dropper.exe exists on any other computers, finds several, and sees if it ran on some of them. Then he requests more information from Sophos Labs to get a detailed analysis. Next, he reviews the results and sees the file is malicious. So he uses the clean and block functionality to eradicate the threat from the environment with one click. Just to review, Intercept X with EDR can help you to answer some of the tough questions you might have about a particular incident, including understanding the scope and impact, detecting attacks that may have gone unnoticed, search for indicators of compromise across the network, prioritize events for further investigation, analyze files to determine if they're a threat or potentially unwanted, and finally, confidently report on your security posture at any given moment. And now, let's jump into a quick demo of Intercept X Advanced with EDR. We've already seen previously how threat cases are critical in helping us discover detected threats in our environment. But now let's take a look at how EDR can help discover potential threats. So here we have our threat cases. Let's jump into one and see some additional functionality that EDR provides. So like before, at the top we have our summary of what happened here, a little bit more information down below, including who the user was who was logged on when the attack occurred. Now we also have the capability with EDR of isolating the device. So if we're not quite sure if there's an active attacker still on this device, or maybe some latent malware or something that hasn't activated itself just yet, we can proactively isolate this device, cutting it off from all other machines on our network to prevent cross-infection, as well as everything on the outside, excluding Sophos Central. So this will prevent any active attacks from exfiltrating data or any additional malware downloads, while still allowing control from Sophos Central. Moving down to our graph, just like before, we could see all the information leading from what we call the root cause or the entry point until the thing we decided was malicious, the beacon. But notice now we have an additional icon on this graph called uncertain reputation. And you can see there's a few of those throughout. So we'll pay close attention to those, but let's just sort of walk through how this particular attack occurred. So here we see Google Chrome is the root cause. So we know here the user opened a web browser, and we can see this uncertain reputation file coming from Chrome. So right here we can see there's some IP connections. So we can tell that Chrome went to these IP addresses here and downloaded this file. And this file was then executed, which we could see here. Once that file ran, we saw that it launched a command prompt. And that command prompt, as you can see here, was then used to execute this fake drop CLI process up here. And once that fake drop process ran, which we can see up here, it also downloaded a bunch of uncertain reputation items. So we can see the file being downloaded here and executed here. Again, downloaded here, executed here. So with EDR, we now have the insight into uncertain reputation files, files that might not be malicious, but files that could potentially cause damage to our organization moving forward. So notice here, if we click on these files, we'll get the same information that we had earlier in every other threat case with Intercept. We also have added this command line parameter. So if this were a command prompt like we saw earlier, we would see the parameters passed to that command prompt, and that would also include PowerShell as well. If this were the first time that our labs has ever seen this file, we'd be able to click this blue button here and get the latest threat intelligence based upon what we think about the file from our machine learning engine. And we'll take a look at all that breakdown information right above. We also have this search for item capability. So using the hash that we have here, we can tell, is this thing, this file that we've clicked on, does it exist anywhere else in our entire organization, on any other computer, whether it's executed or not, does it exist? So with one click, we'll be able to go into searching for that item, and we'll come back to this in a little bit. But now that we know that there's an uncertain reputation item on one of our machines, at least one of our machines, now Sophos is going to help you guide you through the investigation of this item. And we're going to do that with these tabs here. So you can see our overall analysis as a summary right at this first tab on process details. Moving over to report summary, we're showing you a little bit more information. How many third-party AV products per virus total have detected this file as malicious? And with one click, you can go to a report right on virustotal.com. And then you can see how we're breaking down these three main categories to help you decide the attributes of the file, the code similarity of this file, and where it executed from. Is this most similar to good files that we've seen or bad files that we've seen? And we'll break down that analysis a little bit further here under our machine learning analysis tab. So under attributes here, you can see the attributes that we're looking at primarily. You can see that we are comparing this file to 41 million known good files and 56 million known bad files. And these are, this is the score that it's most similar to for each of these attributes. Next here we have code similarity. So we're again comparing this file, the code within this file, to 25 million known good files and 23 million known bad files. So if this were a slightly modified piece of malware that maybe a bad actor slightly modified just to confuse traditional antivirus, you'd see a very high code similarity score here, and these would all be lit up in red as the most similar to something bad. And finally here we have file or path. And you might imagine that if your user executes, let's say, a downloaded file from the internet, that'll typically go into a downloads folder or maybe their desktop. If they receive an attachment in email and they launch it from their email, it'll probably launch from an Outlook temp location or cache location. So these areas or a temp location could be indicative of something that has a lower than average reputation. Whereas if something is installed and running from program files, for example, that might be a more legitimate application. Next, we'll show you any properties about the file we were able to learn. And in file breakdown, we're showing you if the file was signed or not, and we know that most malware is not signed. We'll also show you here if any DLLs were accessed, what methods within those DLLs were called. So this might give you an indication of what this process was trying to do on your system. Now, after you've reviewed all this information, if you decide that this isn't something that belongs on one of your machines, it's not a part of an application that you use for business, you don't know what it is, or you just, after looking at all of the data we've presented you, decided that this is something that could turn into something bad. We give you one button to press to remove that file from every machine in your entire organization that has it, as well as prevent it from ever entering your organization again. So we have a little space here for you to put some documentation about this. Why are you blocking this item? Once you click confirm, it's instantly removed from all machines that have it and prevented from all machines ever getting it. And just in case you've done this by accident, you can reverse this item as well. Now let's look at this search for item that we talked about before. So if I click this here, we'll get instantaneous search results. And the way that we're able to do this is we add one minor component with EDR to your endpoints. And that minor component allows us to trickle feed data about uncertain or low reputation items up to Sophos Central, including the data that we've seen, the file name, the path, the hash, that sort of thing. So when you come in here and you search for files, either the way we've just done through a threat case or in threat searches, which we'll talk about in a minute, you'll get instantaneous results. So here's our search results screen. We can see that this file has been found on 4 other devices, and you can see those devices listed out here, along with the history of that file on those devices, whether or not it's actually been run, which is important to know as well. So you can see these first 2 machines, the file did get the chance to run, whereas the last 2, it did not. We have this actions drop-down box on the right-hand side. So if we click down on this, if there is an existing threat case, we'll have the option to view that threat case. If there's no existing threat case, as in this case here, we can generate a new threat case now with EDR to give us more information about how did this thing get onto the machine in the first place. Here you can see the view existing threat case. So I can jump straight into that threat case with one click. So let's talk about threat searches. We've seen how we can take a known hash from something we've already detected in a threat case and search our entire organization to see if that thing exists anywhere else. But let's say we've read something online that we're concerned about. We want to search all of our machines to see if that thing is in our environment at this point. We can search by full or partial file names, hashes, IP addresses, domains, or even command line parameters now. We looked at how we can present to you the arguments passed to command prompt and PowerShell. You're able to look for command shell and PowerShell executions, and will display important information about what was passed to those shells and what it actually ran. So if I search for a few different items here, partial file names, and click search, you'll see again the search results come back very quickly. The number of hits per endpoint you see in this column here, and then we can simply again jump into the details on that particular endpoint, see whether it's run or not, see the full history of that file on that endpoint, and take our appropriate actions as we discussed before. So we can generate a new threat case if we've already investigated this thing. You can see we have a clean and block functionality. At the very top, you can see we also have that isolate capability we discussed in the threat case as well. So let's go back to our threat searches and now search for PowerShell. Now when we get our results, we'll see this admin tools will have a number of hits up here. So if we click down on that, we can see every execution of PowerShell in the environment along with the parameters passed to it. So for example, if we want to know more information about this first one here, we can just click the See Details link over to the right, and we can see exactly what this PowerShell was passed. So here we can see that it was passed a parameter to go to this website called sophostest.com/call-home. And this is a website that we have that simulates a C2 traffic communication or command and control traffic communication. You can get a lot more information, including information about the parent process. So here we can see that a command prompt was actually used to execute PowerShell and passed this parameter to it. Notice down here we can isolate the endpoint from here as well. And then we have an option we haven't discussed yet as well called Forensic Snapshot. So in each threat case, we present to you what we believe to be the most relevant data surrounding the attack. If you'd like to trace a process back even further or see more surrounding information, a forensic snapshot, while not something you'll need every day, gives you the capability of having access to every piece of data that Sophos' data collector has ever gathered on an endpoint. And this is presented to you in a SQLite database that you can query with simple SQL commands. Each of these threat searches that you perform can also be saved for use later on. So if you want to search for a similar item like PowerShell, or maybe a specific parameter of PowerShell, you're able to do that, save it, and with one click, just go back to that search each time. Thanks very much for joining me for this demo of Intercept X Advanced and Intercept X Advanced with EDR. You can get started today with your free 30-day trial at sophos.com. Don't forget to reach out to your partner or your local Sophos account team listed below this video for more information and pricing.